But I also want to spend some time talking about private blockchains. Because when you think of financial institutions immediately see that they have to keep people's data private, they have to keep people's account values private, and so on and so forth. So private blockchain, even by the way, usage of the word seems to be the one thing that they immediately comes as something more attractive. But the real questions and the key questions that you have to have when you think of this is you have to ask questions of who gets to update the system, can the past be altered, and is there a higher body that can prevent transactions, right? So these are questions that are relevant if you think about the usage of a particular blockchain. Now, if you're financial institutions, clearly you want to have the ability to update and you want to have it limited. So you don't want everybody to mess around with the system, right? So for general fiduciary duty of accounts, that's the first thing. Secondly, you may need to be able to alter the past if there was a fraudulent transaction. And third, we like to think that there's also an outside world where there's lawyers that can also prevent somebody from making transactions. They can prevent a transaction from going through. So, for instance, if there is somebody who is a fraudster or who is a drug kingpin and who uses the network, you want to make sure that that person can actually not use it. Right? So at least that's how the current theory of law enforcement works. So now when you have a public blockchain, the way it works is, so who gets to update? Well, in principle, anybody can update a public blockchain because there's simply a consensus protocol and everybody can participate in it. Can the past be altered? No, it can't. And then can a higher body prevent anything from happening? So the answer to that is no. Now, there are also situations when that is desirable, right? So, there are countries where governments try to steal from people, and you may want to have a situation where that cannot happen. Okay, now let's talk for a minute about what exists. So there are many private blockchain entity and private systems out there. There's one called Hyperledger. This actually originates in the Linux project, and is very strongly sponsored by IBM. There is Quorum, which is a blockchain network initiated and built by JP Morgan. And JP Morgan now recently acquired ConsenSys, and ConsenSys is a firm that produces smart contracts and applications on the Ethereum network. And JP Morgan buying them essentially means that they want to elevate Quorum, which is also based on Ethereum. There's a Libra network, which Facebook is in the process of building, and there is Corda and R3. Right? So these are, Corda's R3 is another system of a private blockchain. Now, one of the things that I want to point out, though, is many of these systems, Hyperledger is based on Linux, and Quorum is actually based on Ethereum. All right. Now let's quickly talk about some of the features. So public blockchain are open to anyone. The past cannot be changed. No one can be excluded. There's high visibility of transactions. That can be a good or bad thing. There's an open access ecosystem, so anybody can use it. But the governance is particularly slow. So you can't pick up the phone, for instance, and ask for something to happen. And privacy you can obtain actually, but it comes at a cost. Now, on private blockchain, there will be some form of joint controller governance. There will be tech support available for somebody who wants to build on this. It's straightforward to initiate KYC and AML, but the transaction secrecy is quite simple to implement here. However, you have to rely on corporate development and on somebody having the willingness and an incentive to improve development over time. Now, you can have compliance with law, right? So you can reverse transactions that are fraudulent. And as an entity, that may be something that's desirable. You can keep competition out. At the same time, for a government regulator that is interested in competition policy, this is a problem because somebody can prevent competition from entering. So now in this situation, you may find it may be interesting that, for instance, the Chinese government works hard and supports public blockchain projects. So these are open projects where essentially anybody can participate in a particular network. And yet in an economy which is considered to be controlling, right? Even in this environment, they help foster the development of public blockchains. We can come to that later in the class.